Well, good morning everybody, and thanks for checking out my video. I say good morning. Maybe it's morning where you're at, maybe not. I don't know. But either way, good morning, good afternoon, good day. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to do a quick little video today, and hopefully this will be just a quick one without a lot of rambling by me. As usually, they're all unscripted. I want to talk about everyday carry knives and tools. Ever since I was a little guy, you might have seen the video on this puppy, I've had a knife or a multi-tool on me or in my pocket at some point in time. And this was probably the very first real one that I had. Before this knife, I did have a small fingernail clipper that had a knife in it. That's when I was about 5 or 6 years old, probably. And I cut myself pretty bad on that. If you have watched an earlier video, you can still see a scar barely running down here from my thumb down through my palm, where I split that open on a piece of foam that was around a speaker on a new stereo that my mom had just got. I was stabbing it with that little cheap fingernail clipper knife thing and cut myself. But anyway, watch the video on this one if you haven't already, if you're interested in it. This was my very first real one. This is a Western camp knife that my mom got me at Montgomery Ward's over in Topeka, Kansas when I was growing up. And this was the first real knife that spent a lot of years in my pocket. That's kind of the one that started it all. It actually spent a lot of time hanging on a little snap that would go on my belt from this bale. But yeah, that was my first everyday carry knife. And now that I look back on it, you know, I really haven't changed a whole lot. Things have gotten more advanced, but I still carry ultimately every day a multi-tool, which consists of a lot more tools than this has, but this is an earlier version of a multi-tool. And then as I started getting into school more, 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th grade era, I switched to this. And this is the actual knife. This was a small case knife that my dad brought home, one for me and one for my brother, actually, if I remember right. And my brother, well, it turns out he's not much of a knife guy, so I think Dad ended up maybe even taking his. But, you know, bless his heart, this little thing right here, I need to clean it. But this was the first case knife I ever owned. And I've had it for a lot of years. And like I said, I do need to give it some loving. But this is probably late 70s, early 80s time frame when Dad brought us home these little case knives. And that was my other everyday carry. I can tell you this, from the time I was in 1st or 2nd grade, all through grade school, just about every day, yeah, I had a knife in my pocket. Now, moving forward, I carried that little case for a lot of years. As I got into middle school and high school, I carried a small folding buck knife. Now, this isn't the actual knife. Unfortunately, I lost it years ago, but this is the case that it came in, and it was a knife this same size, except the one I had black scales on it with some nickel silver bolsters, but it was a little folding buck knife along the lines of this one. And that's probably the knife I carried all up into high school eras along the line of that. And then I kind of switched to a knife like this. Now this is a blue one, but this is the Victorinox Tinker. This particular one says Union Carbide on it. I actually got this one at an estate sale, I think for $8, I believe. But I carried a Tinker a lot during high school. I thought the Tinker was a good utility knife. You know, you have your large blade, you have your small blade, then of course you have your screwdriver, can opener, wire stripper. I'm sorry, that's a bottle opener. This is the can opener with a small screwdriver on it. Then of course you have your Phillips screwdriver. Now, on some of the earlier Tinkers, this one is not. This one is probably a newer one. The Phillips screwdriver was split down the middle. And what that was for sardine can opening or something similar, where you have the little minnow tab, you would stick that in there and then twist like this, and it would open the can. And also some of the tinkers would have a pin, a little hole right here that held a pin, a PIN pin, a little pin for just for whatever purposes. This particular one doesn't have it, but they've always had the tweezers and the toothpick on there. Nothing new about these, but I can say to this day, most recently to my son-in-law, to this day, giving a tinker, a Victorinox tinker, is one of the best gifts I can think of to give someone. And I still give them out as gifts a lot to people. You can get them on Amazon still for, I don't know, 18, 20 bucks. Maybe they go up to 22 or something sometimes. And sometimes you can catch them on sale at all places. Target really run a good sale on these. So yeah, that was in my pocket through college. And I'm up into, through high school, up into college years, I carried a tinker a lot. Again, this isn't the one. I still do have the tinker I carried a lot, but it's in I think it's in a bug out bag or something like that somewhere. And sometimes I would carry one of these as well. This is the Victorinox Classic. And this one is a promotional one. I picked this up, I think, at a yard sale for $4 or $5 somewhere. I really didn't carry this a whole lot, but it would be on my keychain quite a bit. I think in my early years of college, when I worked at Kmart, I used to have one of these on my keychain a lot. And then I switched to this little puppy. This was probably in the early 90s, and this is one of the first one-handed knives that I had. And this is a Kershaw, some type of a Kershaw. It's made by Kai in Japan. This is when there were still good knives. And this is just a simple, well, it's a chisel ground, as you can see, liner lock knife. I used to know the history of this particular model, and I can't recall it right now, but I carried this for a few years, 2 or 3 years. And I actually, and it was this actual knife that I carried, I actually lost this one time. Couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, man, I lost that knife. And about a week or 2 later, I was going into the pool hall, which was Ron's Family Recreation Center in Jonesboro, Arkansas. That's where I went to college. I was going into the pool hall where I usually go into the back door, and I happened to step out of my truck and I looked down on the ground. I saw this knife laying down there on the ground, buried underneath some gravel. It had fallen out of my pocket apparently, and no one had seen it. I picked it up, flipped it a few times, and it was running fine. So yeah, that's how I rescued that one. But then we took a different turn, because around that time, which was around 93 or 94, Mr. Tim Leatherman graced the EDC world with his first Leatherman tool. And that's what this is. This is one of the very first models of Leatherman. I think this actually came out before he even started making the new one, which was the, oh, what was it, the Super Tool, or I can't remember what was the next one he made. I'm sure there's guys out there that know more about it than I do. But somewhere in here even, this is dated 93, I think. Let me, okay, here it is. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can zoom this in on there. Right there. I believe that's showing up, but that says 0993, which I believe means this was made in September of 93. And it was shortly after that I got this, because I know it was right at the tail end of 93. If I remember right, actually, I think my mom, and yes, I was about 20, well, I turned 23 years old in 1993. I think my mom bought this for me for my birthday that year, if I remember right. But it was this actual Leatherman. We got it at JCPenney. I think we ordered it. I think she ordered it online. I seem to remember going to JCPenney store in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and picking this up. But I carried this a lot of years. As you can see, I didn't use it very hard. I did use it, but I always was careful with my knives and multi-tools to use them and not abuse them in the majority of cases. And this one I had on my belt for a long time, probably, oh, I don't know, I'd say I wore this for at least 5 or 6 years. And then along about that time, I guess it was the late 90s, I was introduced to Spydercos. Now, this is not one from that time period. I still do have it somewhere. I actually carried an Endura in that time period that had the plastic clip on it. And this was probably in the, again, late 90s. I remember I broke off the plastic clip. It was a molded on plastic clip, which is how Spyderco originally did them. I actually called Spyderco, and I think the guy that founded Spyderco happened to answer the phone. I looked him up years later. It was Sal Glesser, I think is his name. I can't remember. Anyway, it was the guy that founded Spyderco, and sorry about that. He said, yeah, send it in, we'll take care of it. And what they did is they ground off the plastic nub that was left from where the clip broke, and they screwed on a metal clip. Now, again, that wasn't this knife, that wasn't Endura, and I still have it. It's just in a bug-out bag somewhere. But that's what I switched to carrying for a long time, was an Endura or a Delica. And this is a Delica, one of the newer Delicas, Delica 4. But the Endura I carried for a long time, and then I would carry a Delica. Now, this is the second Delica that I had. And mostly I carried the Delicas because I started working in an office environment around that time period. And I didn't really find myself having a lot of uses for a multi-tool on my hip. But I did switch, and I don't have it with me, but in the late 90s, I switched to carrying a Leatherman again. This was probably around late 90s, early 2000s, and I carried a Wave for a lot of years. And my son actually traded that Wave away from me just this past weekend. He decided he needed it more than I do, and I was glad to see it go to a home. And then after the Wave, I started carrying this one. This is a Skeletool, and I still do carry this sometimes in this pouch. Now, this pouch is actually a pouch for the Leatherman Free P4, which I'll show you in a second. But I like carrying the Skeletool in it because the Skeletool is quite a bit lighter than the Free. And obviously, I carried this for a while. Leathermans, to me, especially the ones where you can access the blade with one hand, when I'm carrying a Leatherman that has a blade that's accessible with one hand, most of the time that's pretty much all I'll carry. I don't usually carry a folder anymore, mainly because there's usually my pockets are full of other EDC type stuff. So yeah, I carry that, and now we're all the way up to my latest one, which I've been carrying for the last, well, ever since they came out. This is the Free P4 by Leatherman. Now, this is the case that came from Leatherman for this, but I just wasn't crazy about it. I wear a 17-ounce Hanks belt, and it's real thick, and just this little chintzy tab on it. I wish they would provide a leather case like the old leather cases that were one piece from Leatherman and riveted and then squared off. I've always loved these types of cases. The closest I could find was this one, which is by Benchcraft Leather. I think I bought this on Amazon. It was pretty cheap, around $20 something. It's okay. It's okay. I wish when they made this, and I thought about doing this myself, that they had wet molded this into more right angles to fit the tool better. But they didn't. It is what it is. And you can see how thick my belt is. I carry this with me anytime I leave the house. But that's what it's advanced to. You know, we went from, in the late 70s, from this to this. That's technology for you. A lot of times people don't think about how, over time, how more advanced our simple tools that we use from day to day have become. Think about Robinson drivers, the square drive screwdrivers, Torx head screws and screwdrivers, how much easier those are, less prone to slipping. I mean, they even use them in the Leathermans, etc. For that very reason, you can get a much better bite on a much smaller screw head than a simple Phillips or flathead screw. Little things like that, a lot of times people dismiss when they look at stuff over the years. And that's basically what this video is about. Is a sampling of my EDC items that I carry over the years. And I won't go into a whole lot about the advantages of a Leatherman versus just a single tool, etc. if you have to go that far into it, there's plenty of other guys out there that have bigger videos than me on it. But I will say, I do like this little free. I like that I can open it one-handed. And the free has got just a wide multitude of tools. You know, the only complaint I have about this, well, really it's two complaints. One of them I can't do anything about. One of them is it's a little bit heavy versus the Wave that I was carrying. The Wave was was the first generation Wave, obviously. And that's probably the single tool that I've carried the longest. Maybe my son will send me a video, a picture of it, and I can drop it in here or do a short video on it possibly. But the other thing I don't like, and the Wave had this to where on one side you can open with the thumb, one-handed, the straight edge blade, right? And then on the Wave you could flip it around, and then the other side would open the serrated blade. On this one, it opens the saw. For some reason, they have the smooth edge on one side, and then on the same side of the handle is where they have the serrated edge. And I wish it was different. You know, I think I emailed Leatherman, and they told me that I could switch it around, because I think they said it was possible to flip it around, but the problem was it would void the warranty because I'd have to take these screws out, etc., and everything else, and I just never decided to mess with it. I've gotten used to it now. But I also like this free because of the fact that you can open it with one hand if you need to. Use it against your leg or something like that to leverage it open. And that's another big plus. You know, I had a Gerber multi-tool that I carried for a little while, and it didn't make this presentation. I still have it, but mainly because it was big and bulky, what I considered at the time, compared to this one. But it is probably about the same size as this now that I think about it. But the quality on these new Leathermans are just sensational. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, guys, is basically the evolution of EDC over the years. Hope you enjoyed this video. I doubt anyone has taken the time to watch it all the way to the end, but if you have, you know, let me know in the comments. Say, yeah, I watched it all the way to the end. Hope you guys stay safe out there and have a great day. And please don't forget to take the time to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.